In a remote forest, accompanied by two demon slayers, Wind Hashira Sanemi Shinazugawa and Serpent Hashira Obanai Iguro, stalk an abandoned castle, which Obanai surmises has been forgotten since the Meiji Restoration. A demon slayer confirms a woman from a nearby village has been abducted, but they found nothing when they investigated the castle, and despite the demon slayer court being on high alert, it is now the second disappearance. Sanemi rebukes them for their lesser skill, allowing the kidnapping to occur when Obanai spots a demon below their position. They see him carrying the missing woman and give chase. As he makes his way to the castle, the demon realizes he is being followed and berates himself for not previously killing the demon slayers. The four enter the castle, but unbeknownst to them, it is crawling with numerous demons. One pounces on a demon slayer, but is quickly killed by Obanai, while another is beheaded by Sanemi. As the demons begin to attack, the Hashira are able to kill them, but the weaker demon slayers struggle to fight back. Obanai orders them to retreat while he continues the mission with Sanemi. When one insists on staying to help, Sanemi dismisses them as hindrances and repeats the order, causing them to retreat. Obanai notes that something is amiss, and Sanemi confirms his suspicions. They have never seen demons collect in a swarm before. He then hears the woman cry for help and leaps onto an upper floor, housing a large horde of demons. Using wind breathing's second form, Claws, purifying wind, Sanemi eviscerates the horde in one ripping attack. More demons converge on him when Obanai then appears, performing serpent breathing, fifth form, slithering serpent and beheading them in a single fluid slash. Sanemi expresses annoyance at his assistants when they see the kidnapper holding the woman. The demon flees upon realizing his pursuers are the Hashira as Sanemi demands his surrender, killing the demons in his path. They follow the kidnapper to outside the castle and are surrounded by more demons. Wondering where they are coming from, Sanemi allows Obanai to take over as he goes for the woman leaping onto the rooftops. Obanai uses serpent breathing, third form, coil choke, leaping off the edge to kill the demons in a rapid winding attack. Sanemi corners the kidnapper and notices him surrounded by lesser demons. The demons attack, but Sanemi kills them all with wind breathing, fourth form, rising dust storm, showering himself in blood. The kidnapper then surrenders the woman by throwing her off the roof, but she is caught by Obanai. The Hashiras chase the demon as he falls back into the castle, but when they leap inside, they instead see a vast, endless space of wooden halls and lamplit rooms crawling with even more demons. The Infinity Castle then collapses in on itself as they fall inside. Sanemi attempts to kill the kidnapper, but only manages to stab the ground as the alternate dimension vanishes. Obanai questions where the demons are now, but Sanemi crudely responds that he is as unsure as he is. Riding a cart through the countryside, Kanao Sayuri is asked by the puller if he should leave her at the crossroads. She thanks the man and makes her way to the butterfly mansion. Kyo Teragshi greets her and is joined by Naho Takada and Su Nakahara in welcoming her back. Kanao sees Shinobu Kako and announces her return. Shinobu notes that the attack on the swordsmith village was just as she described, but thanks to the efforts of Muichiro, Mitsuri, Tanjiro, and more, 2 upper ranks have been killed. The revelation that Nezuko is immune to sunlight is also key, as it signals significant developments to come. Muzan Kibutsuji will now hunt her to gain the immunity to sunlight. An emergency Hashira meeting has been called, and as Shinobu makes her way to the mansion of the Uboyashikis, she asks Kanao if she can watch over Nezuko. She is surprised by this, but Shinobu has faith in her. Still recovering, Tanjiro speaks with Goto and learns the swordsmith village is being moved. Goto notes that the swordsmiths are working hard to move and restore the village. As he remarks it was miraculous that damage wasn't too severe, Tanjiro remembers the incredible power of Hantengu's manifestations. Goto adds that the course had previously made hidden villages to protect the swordsmiths in the aftermath of an attack, amazed by the foresight of Kagaya Ubayashiki. He then wonders if Tanjiro is okay eating so quickly after his ordeal, but he mentions that Mitsuri has already started eating. When Goto asks if it is true both the love and mist Hashira were asleep for 2 days before recovering at the third, Tanjiro confirms it. As he remarks that Tanjiro, quickly eating his food, seems to be becoming more like the Hashira, Goto asks about what happened to Nezuko. Tanjiro responds that she has gained the immunity to sunlight, but it is unclear if she is turning back into a human or evolving as a demon. Goto, thinking that Shinobu is examining her, is corrected by Tanjiro saying it is in fact Tameo who is examining Nezuko. When Goto asks Tanjiro who Tameo is, he panics and suddenly begins choking on his food, which the Kakushi chides him for. He adds that since Nezuko's immunity was revealed, the course had been on high alert since. At the emergency meeting, Sanemi and Obanai join the remaining Hashira. The latter apologizes for their late arrival, but Gyomei Himejima instead commends them for their mission. Sanemi asks Mitsuri and Muichiro if they really fought upper ranks. The two confirm they did, causing him to express annoyance at never being able to face them. Obanai asks them on their physical well-being. Mitsuri excitedly tells him she is doing well, ecstatic to hear his worry of her, while Muichiro comments that while better, he has not fully healed. Gyomei adds that losing more Hashira would put the corpse at risk and is relieved they survived after killing the upper ranks. Shinobu also mentions that their wounds have healed abnormally quickly. As Giyu Tomioka wonders if Kagaya will address the new developments, the meeting commences with the arrival of Kagaya's wife Amae and their children. Amae informs them that Kagaya's health has worsened to the point where he can never appear before them again, bowing to the Hashira. They are shocked by the news but bow to her in return, with Gyomei praying that Kagaya may find the strength to live on even a bit longer and for Amae to remain strong. Amae thanks him for his words and addresses the news that a demon immune to sunlight has been found. Muse and Kibutsuji will become more focused than ever to take Nezuko, and thus, an immense confrontation is upon them. She then addresses Mitsuri and Muichiro, being told that mysterious marks appeared on them during their battles and hoping they can explain how to induce them. She explains that during the Sengoku period, the demon slayers of the first breathing style who nearly defeated Muzan all bore a mark akin to demonic patterns. Sanemi mentions he has never heard of such marks, to which Amae notes that many have brooded over the mark not appearing in them. Information is scarce and vague, only one record exists about it, written in the personal notes of a demon slayer who used the first breathing style. It explains that when the mark appears on one person, it will manifest to those around them in resonance. The first person to gain the mark in their time was Tanjiro, but when asked how it appeared, he could not give a clear explanation. As such, Amae hopes that Mitsuri and Muichiro can explain. Put on the spot, Mitsuri, who had been admiring Amae's beauty, refocuses her to give her explanation. But her vague and confusing slew of gestures and onomatopoeia only bewilder the Yubayasha kiss and Hashira, and the embarrassed love Hashira apologizes, wishing she could crawl into a hole. Muichiro then speaks up. Though he was unaware of the mark at the time, looking back at what happened, he could remember several notable details, believing that these conditions, if met, could manifest it. In his previous battle, he was poisoned and paralyzed, but seeing a boy about to be killed trying to save him, Muichiro regains his memories and overwhelming rage overcame control of his emotions. He believes his heart rate exceeded 200 beats per minute and his body temperature exceeded 39 degrees Celsius. Shinobu questions if he could even move during such precarious conditions, but Muichiro believes reaching the point of no return and surviving is the difference between manifesting the mark and not. Amae asks how he could know his temperature, to which he explains that he was treated for a fever after the battle and his body had a reading that felt the same as during the battle. When Sanemi questions if the conditions could truly be so simple, Giyu remarks on his envy and Sanemi's simple thinking to believe it as such, though he does not speak when the angered Wind Hashira asks to repeat himself. Shinobu reasons that their top priority is to awaken these marks, and Gyomei tells Amae to reassure Kagaya that they will succeed. However, Amae adds one more caveat about the marks, and those who have it can do nothing but accept it. The Hashira are shocked to hear about what will happen when they gain it. Later, after Amae has left, Gyomei wonders what will become of him after hearing about the caveat. Giyu decides to leave the meeting, but Sanemi orders him to stay as they must decide their respective roles. Giyu replies it does not concern him but the six of them, leading Obanai to accuse him of forgoing his duties as a Hashira and getting a head start in training. Shinobu pleads with Giyu to explain himself, but he only remarks that he is not like them. Angered by the comment, Sanemi recalls him saying the same phrase and asks if he is looking down on them. Mitsuri tries diffusing the tense situation, but Giyu begins to walk away. Sanemi tries to grab his shoulder to stop him when Gyomei claps his hands, shaking the entire room and silencing everyone. The stone Hashira orders them all to sit and explains a proposal he has. After providing Tanjiro with more food, Goto asks for the whereabouts of Nezuko, Sumi, Kyo, and Naho, also noting that Aowa Kanzaki is also absent. Tanjiro replies that since no one is in need of medical attention, they spent time playing with Nezuko, adding that they have been teaching her to speak again. The Kakushi remarks that all is at peace until the arrival of Zenitsu at Gatsuma, just as the demon slayer reaches the butterfly mansion. Kyo calls out to the others that Zenitsu has returned. Sumi commends him for completing his mission, but Zenitsu is instead wondering if they came to welcome him back. He mentions that his mission was difficult, but he persevered under the belief he would be missed if he died. The girls deny missing him if he did, although Sumi mentions that they are happy that he returned alive, causing him to sheepishly thank them. Oi arrives and commends him on his mission, but soon grows annoyed when Zenitsu immediately asks if she was lonely without him. Nezuko then appears behind the gate to greet him as well, causing Zenitsu to yell out in excitement at seeing her once again, much to the discomfort of the girls as they cover their ears from his loud shouting. He takes her hands and asks why she is now talking, if it was for him, and remarking that they can finally get married. Aoi attempts to pull Zenitsu away from her, but he continues to bombard Nezuko with compliments and the things he wishes to do once they are married. Nezuko then tells him welcome back Inosuke, causing the girls to grow amused but nervous at her blunder. Zenitsu repeats Inosuke's name and she addresses him as Inosuke once again. Deeply angered, the girl he loves has called him an entirely wrong name. He demands to know Inosuke's whereabouts in order to kill him, as Aoi reprimands him for his violent intent. Goto questions where Inosuke is now, but Tanjiro, despite seeing him in the morning, is unsure. He mentions that Inosuke had been teaching Nezuko to saying his name, but Tanjiro was unaware of before asking Goto for more dango, much to the Kakushi's chagrin. Hotaru then appears in the room, uncharacteristically quiet and panting heavily. The Demon Slayer welcomes him but grows concerned at his well-being, seeing he is in visible pain. Hotaru gives him his new Nichiren katana and Tanjiro is amazed to see Kyojuro Rengoku's Tsuba installed on the blade, thanking him for saving Kotetsu as he begins to tear up. Offered a seat by Goto, Hotaru attempts to tell Tanjiro to see the blade, which he unsheathes to reveal its unique pattern. He remarks that the steel is of notably quality and its previous owner was likely a powerful swordsman. Tanjiro sees the kanji for slay etched onto it. The swordsmith explains that the sword's creator likely made as a goal to kill all demons. It was forged before the coarse ranks were introduced, hence why only the Hashira have their blades etched with the phrase Destroyer of Demons. When Tanjiro asks why he couldn't see its pattern when he used it, Hotaru angrily answers it was because it was only polished the first stage when it was taken from him, and even now, he is under much pain because of his wounds. He pulls on Tanjiro's cheek while ranting about having to start again when he was interrupted. When Goto interjects by noting that the Demon Slayer's injuries are worse than his, Hotaru threatens to kill him. He then demands that Tanjiro bring him Minarashi Dango till his death. Tanjiro obliges, and eventually, Hotaru slowly walks out of the room. Though he had heard rumors of Hotaru, Goto notes it is quite different seeing him in person. Though Tanjiro adds that being in pain, Hotaru was actually calmer than usual. A voice next to them asks if they could be quieter. Genya, lying in bed nearby, is irritated by the commotion. Tanjiro apologizes for the noise when Inosuke suddenly bursts through the window of the hospital ward. As the masked demon slayer loudly exclaims in excitement, Goto warns him about Shinobu after smashing the window. Genya covers his ears and bemoans his predicament, wishing to be in a separate room. Inosuke claims that joint strengthening training is about to commence, but when asked by Tanjiro about what it entails, he does not know. As the Hashira meeting enters the night, they discuss finished training plan, with Sanemi adding that the dates and time are left to add. Gyomei believes they must begin in 3 days. Time is against them, and they do not know Muzan's plan for the future. Thus, he wants them all ready. Obanai mentions that when demons begin to attack again, they won't be prepared. To this, Shinobu questions if they will attack during training. Gyomei explains that since the swordsmith village's attack, demon activity has decreased significantly. Until now, the Hashira could only dedicate time to train their Tsubukos and their duties, but now they must train the entire corps. Hence, the reason he has proposed Hashira training. One by one, the Hashira voice their acknowledgement and unanimously agree with him. When Obanai asks if they alone will be enough, Gyomei proposes bringing the retired Hashira to help, which they do not object to. With that, Shinobu remarks that their last issue to solve is Giyu's lack of involvement. While speaking with Tanjiro, Zenitsu bemoans having to return to training despite just completing his recent mission. Tanjiro is excited at the prospect of Hashira training, but his friend vehemently disagrees, calling it horrible and hellish and believing whoever thought of it should die. Tanjiro tells him that sparring with superiors is a shortcut to improvement, only to have Zenitsu angrily gnaw on his forehead while yelling that they are no longer friends whilst he is so optimistic about it. He tells Tanjiro he is only acting as such because he is in a bed in recovery, while he must train now. As he walks away, Tanjiro calls out to Zenitsu and thanks him for his advice about thunder breathing, as it helped greatly in the battle against Hantengu, though he was not as fast as him. Believing that connections can help in tough situations, he hopes that what they learn in Hashira training will lead to a better future. However, Zenitsu instead interprets his words to believe that everyone is helpless without him, smiling brightly as he bids him goodbye. Nonetheless, Tanjiro thanks him. Watching as several demon slayers struggling to run, Tenjin Yuzui chastises them for their lack of fitness and demands they hasten themselves as if being attacked by a demon. Several trainees soon collapse in exhaustion. To Tenjin's annoyance, he beats on one with a wooden sword while remarking that the active Hashira's training will be harder. Seeing him as lively as ever, Hinatsuru, Suma, and Makio join him in his efforts and prepare onigiri and miso for the trainees. Makio calls out that lunch is ready, causing the trainees to run for food, though some continue to lie in the dirt, unable to move. Hinetsuru gently asks Tenjin not to act too harshly on them, but he replies that if the demon slayers are not sufficiently trained when sent to the next Hashira, he will be blamed. Given miso by Muichiro, Tenjin takes a sip as he tells the exhausted trainees that what they are dealing with now is nothing compared to what is to come. Suma asks him about the other stages, to which Tenjin replies that upon completing his stage, the next is Muichiro's high-speed movement training, followed by Mitsuri's flexibility training. After that is Obanei's training to improve swordsmanship, Senemi's endless striking training, and lastly, Gyomei's muscle strengthening. The Hashira themselves also must improve their strength by sparring with the core members, and though Tenjin wishes to train with everything he can give as well, he leaves it to them instead. Several trainees fly into the air during Senemi's stage as he lands a powerful blow, knocking them all away. He realizes his efforts won't raise his temperature if his opponents are too weak. In Mitsuri's stage, trainees cower in fear as she stretches one of them with her strength. Obanei in his stage chastises the trainees as he knocks them down with his serpent-like swordsmanship, instructing them to feel where the enemy will strike. In Muichiro's stage, a trainee struggles to defend himself from the mist Hashira as he criticizes him for the numerous openings in his stance. Standing beneath a torrent of water, trainees in Gyomei's stage struggle to keep upright. Several of them collapse and float down the water as Gyomei tells them to give their all for the sake of Kagaya, the demon slayers who have fallen in battle, and for those who are still alive. While in bed reading, Tanjiro hears his Kasugai crow pecking on the window, though he is pecked on the head as he opens it. Given a letter from Kagaya, Tanjiro reads it and is shocked to learn Giyu is not participating in Hashira training. While tending to Kagaya, a maid informs him that the Hashira have begun training the court members for the coming battle. She also tells him that his children carry his will and connect with his feelings, willing to act for the ambition to defeat Muzan. Kagaya then quietly calls to her as she takes his hand with hers. He thanks her for everything she had done, causing a maid to tear up and reply it had been her pleasure. In a forest surrounding a distant town stands a hidden house masked by Yoshiro's talismans. While writing in her journals, Tameo hears something in her window. A Kasugai crow greets her and explains he is the messenger of Kagaya of Ubayashiki. He commends Tameo for hiding so well, as Kagaya had become immobile in the time he had been searching for her. Tameo questions how he found her, to which the crow answers he had identified the house's previous owner and examined how Yoshiro's blood demon art worked. Being a mere crow assured no one would suspect him, and he reassures her that he has no intentions to harm them. Tameo asks for his intentions, wondering if Kagaya is attempting to deceive her before wondering about Yoshiro. The crow eases her concern by noting that Yoshiro is above them and unharmed. He explains to Tameo that within the Demon Slayer Corps is a young woman who also possesses knowledge about demons' physiology and pharmacology. He asks if she would join the corps to help in examining Nezuko and to defeat Muzan, inviting her to the residence of the Ubayashikis. Shocked by the message, Tameo questions how a demon like her could possibly be invited to the corps headquarters. The crow hopes to hear a favorable response from her before flying away. Yoshiro enters her room to see Tameo closing her window. Believing they have been found, he begins to plan their escape. She instead tells him that with Nezuko's immunity to the sun, something significant is brewing, or perhaps even before that happened, as she thinks back to a particular moment in her past, believing that happened then has come to the present. Responding to Yoshiro's disbelief, Tameo tells him they will be moving out of the house, but not for the same reason as previous times. Realizing her research must be finished quickly, she asks for his help, believing that this is the last time they will move. Shocked by her request, Yoshiro listens as she tells him they will go to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. In his bed, Tanjiro reads Kagaya's letter to him. Oyakata asks about his well-being as he explains he is no longer able to move. He had wanted to speak to Giyu but cannot, and with now being a crucial time to have everyone united, he asks if he would speak to the water Hashira instead. Tanjiro resolved to accomplish Kagaya's wish. As he leaves the butterfly mansion, he finds Aoi outside sweeping, who asks where he is going. She then wonders if he is going to Hashira training. Tanjiro answers that he will but must speak to someone first. Satisfied by the answer, Aoi leaves but is called to by Tanjiro, who asks her on how to tell someone who keeps to themselves that they aren't alone. She is unsure how to answer, as even if his intentions were to cheer them up, if it was her, she would choose to be alone. After asking if he is leaving soon, to which Tanjiro answers that he is, Aoi then asks if he is meeting only one person, which he confirms. She walks away to fetch something, leaving him to ponder on his difficult task ahead. She gives Tanjiro a bag of onigiri for him and the person he is meeting, which he thanks her for. Tanjiro arrives at Giyu's residence and begins calling from the front door to check if anyone is home. Sitting quietly inside, Giyu hears him from outside as Tanjiro eventually tells him he is entering. Confused and believing he misheard him, he hears the door open and is shocked to see Tanjiro peering inside and looking for him. As he explains what is happening at Hashira training to him, Giyu notes he is already aware of what is happening. Tanjiro tells him he can return to active service in a week and asks if he can join in his training, to which Giyu says no. He then remarks that Giyu smells angry and asks if he is, to which he answers he is angry at him for not mastering water breathing, believing he was supposed to become the water Hashira. Tanjiro apologizes but notes that Sakanji Gorokodaki had told him that it wasn't unusual to change one's style or create a derivation, and since water breathing is a basic style, many such derivations have been made. Giyu explains he means for him become the water Hashira as no one is. Tanjiro, surprised by his remark, notes that there is one who holds the title him. Giyu bluntly tells Tanjiro he is not the water Hashira before ordering him to leave as he walks away. Noticing Kagaya's letter and how he had asked him to speak to Giyu, Tanjiro resolves to do whatever it takes. Calling to Giyu again, he mentions having onigiris and asks if he would like to eat with him, believing he will be calmer when satiated. With no answer received, he puts the onigiris outside his door. That morning, Giyu finds him lying in his home as he wakes up. Tanjiro is glad to see he ate the food, but Giyu walks away, ignoring his calls to him. Dismayed but not disheartened, Tanjiro proceeds to follow him outside, pestering him with numerous inane questions. For the next several days, he continues following Giyu in everything he does, even as he is eating, meditating, bathing, or using the lavatory. Eventually growing tired of his persistent following, Giyu finally confesses to Tanjiro that he did not pass final selection. He asks if he means the selection at the Mountain of Wisteria, and Giyu confirms it. He explains that during his year of entering the selection, there was a boy who, like himself, lost his family to demons, a peach hair-colored boy, and he states his name was Sabito, causing Tanjiro to remember him. They were both 13 when they met. They became friends because of that, and since they were similarly lonely. He describes him as kind with a strong sense of justice. Giyu sadly remembers that Sabito was the only one to die in final selection, but not before almost every demon on the mountain single-handedly. As a result, everyone but him passed. He himself was injured and dazed by the first demon that attacked him. Before it could attack him again, Sabito suddenly appeared, using water-breathing fourth form, striking Tide to rush in and behead it. Weak from his wound and the heavy blood loss, Giyu nearly faints but was caught by Sabito to stop him from falling. However, they soon heard a distant cry of terror as an applicant was about to be eaten by a large green demon. Sabito entrusted Giyu to fellow trainees and ran to the source of the voice. Giyu attempted to reach out to him but suddenly collapses. Waking up a week later, he learned from the survivors that he passed final selection, but Giyu questions how he, someone who did not defeat a single demon and had to be rescued, could be considered someone to pass the selection. He believes he is not worthy of the title as the Water Hashira and cannot even stand to be with the other Hashira on equal terms. He considers himself different from them, and furthermore, he does not see himself deserving of a place in the Corps. Giyu tells Tanjiro to seek out another Hashira to train with, claiming that while the mark will not come to him, it might have on Sabito, and that he is simply wasting his time being with him before walking away. Driven to tears by Giyu's telling of his past, Tanjiro imagines that Giyu wishes that he had died, a pain he is familiar with himself. To have someone one had deeply cared for die, and the wish that they had lived instead of oneself, a pain like being ripped apart. He remembers when Sabito had mysteriously trained him on Mount Sagiri despite his death. He realizes that Sabito would be the same age as Giyu had he lived, and marvels in his feat of saving everyone on Mount Fujikasane by his lonesome, whereas he was occupied with himself. Tanjiro believes that had he lived, Sabito would have undoubtedly been an incredible swordsman, adding that it is likely another reason Giyu believes he should have died instead. He had felt the same when Kyojuro was killed, an incredible and noble person who protected at the cost of his life, even thinking that he himself should have died in place of him, as he even believed Kyojuro was capable of defeating Muzan someday. Yet he knew the late flame Hashira believed in him. He attempts to find the words to encourage Giyu, knowing that despite what he himself believes, Giyu would have undoubtedly pushed himself and suffer on his path to becoming a Hashira. While he knows it is not his right to criticize him, he believes he must try to ask him of something. Walking to try and reach Giyu, he lags behind him as he is on crutches while being ignored, but Tanjiro eventually asks Giyu if he was going to pass on what Sabito had entrusted to him. His words stop the Hashira in his tracks, causing him to touch his face and reminisce on a moment in his past. During their training, Sabito had slapped him in the face, angered at him saying that he should have died and warning him that repeating his self-pity will be the end of their friendship. He reminds Giyu his older sister had hid him from demons the day before her marriage, and that he of all people should not be insulting her memory. Sabito tells Giyu not to die, to pass on the life his sister gave him in the place of hers. He remarks the shock and pain of Sabito's slap is coming to him vividly, asking how he could forget the conversation with him. He remembered choosing not to reminisce on the moment as it would only drive him to tears and grief and pain. He says the names of his sister, Sutako and Sabio, apologizing to them for his immaturity. Seeing Giyu was not speaking, Tanjiro begins to fear he had caused the already pained Giyu even more harm. He suddenly has an idea, given that he cannot spar with him yet. He has the idea of a speed-eating contest that, on the occasion he win, he can use to encourage Giyu to participate in Hashira training, and since Giyu does not speak often, it is ideal. Giyu then turns to Tanjiro and apologizes to him, but before he can explain his willingness to train, Tanjiro asks if he would join him in a soba-eating contest, much to his surprise and confusion. At a soba shop as they eat, Giyu notes that regarding a program for Hashira training, he did not see Shinobu mentioned, asking Tanjiro about what she is teaching the corpse. To that, Tanjiro replies that he too is unaware, wondering how she is doing. Walking to her house, a visibly agitated Shinobu sits down and attempts to calm herself. She prays for Kane to help her and attempts to reason that only the immature cannot control their emotions, but she herself struggles to keep composed. Kanao then appears to inform her she is leaving to participate in Sanemi's training. She asks Shinobu if she would train her after completing Gyomei's training, but the Hashira tells her Tsukuko she is not participating in training. Kanao becomes confused but is called to by her to sit before her. Kanao explains she had wanted to do more training with her, causing Shinobu to smile at seeing her adoptive sister becoming more open and candid with her feelings. Just as she imagined, Shinobu believes that now is the right time. She tells Kanao about the demon who killed Kane and intends to explain to her the plan she will devise to kill them. As Tanjiro enters the next stage of training, he walks into Muichiro's abode to see him lecturing and sparring with a trainee. He pleads that he has endured enough, but Muichiro coldly tells him he will be eaten by demons with his lack of effort and commands him to keep fighting. The trainee swings his wooden blade but is promptly disarmed and knocked down by Muichiro, who remarks that he would have died 3 times over in a true battle. He then addresses the other trainees who are all visibly exhausted and weary, and orders them to keep moving even when struck. Trainer and trainees take their respective stances as the Miss Hashira tells them to keep up with him. In rapid succession, he knocks down 5 trainees and even aims his wooden blade at one trainee's neck to demonstrate his inability to keep up before striking his wrists. Muichiro once again tells him of his supposed death before defeating the rest of those standing, reminding them they are dead should they stop moving. He notices Tanjiro in the entrance and warmly greets him, surprising Tanjiro with his sudden shift in demeanor. Outside, the Hashira's Kasugai Crow wastes no time insulting the trainees and wishing they were eaten by demons, much to their chagrin as they attempt to shoo her away. Tanjiro bows to Muichiro and remarks of his excitement to train with him. Muichiro tells him likewise before asking that he follow him outside. Entering the shed in his yard, he announces their entry to his swordsmith, Kozo Kanamori. Tanjiro is surprised to see him again, and Kozo remarks of his relief to see he has recovered. When he asks Kozo why he is here, Muichiro answers it was he who asked him to come before picking up a katana from a nearby rack and asking Tanjiro to hold it. The demon slayer holds it out as asked, and Muichiro demonstrates the blade's cutting edge by throwing a paper airplane at it, causing it to split neatly in half. As Tanjiro marvels at the katana's sharpness, they explain that Kozo was staying permanently with the Hashira to keep his swords in optimum condition for battle. Muichiro mentions that when Kagaya was informed of this change, he allowed it and even provided a work area specifically for Kozo to sharpen his swords, before solemnly remarking that the course leader had always prioritized the needs of his Hashira before his own health, something Muichiro wishes that he did. During training later in the day, Muichiro orders his opponent to pick up his blade again. The trainee, tired and pained, goes for a frenzied attack and is promptly struck down by Muichiro, concerning Tanjiro. He chastises him for his emotional attack, comparing it to a moth flying into a flame, and remarks that even if he wins more times than he loses, one loss will mean his death in battle, and he must hone his every move to survive. Seeing he is not responding, Muichiro calls off training for the day and leaves, and the others trainees quickly tend to their comrade. One trainee talks to Tanjiro about asking Muichiro to ease up on them, with another remarking that they would soon collapse before facing a demon. Instead, Tanjiro notes that Muichiro might be having the most difficulty since he is training them alone, to which they half-heartedly agree with. Outside, as the trainees cool themselves off, they wonders if Muichiro could at least soften the way he speaks. To this, Kanjiro mentions that Muichiro's tone has softened compared to before, which they find unbelievable. They then notice the Hashira leaving the building to go somewhere, as he has done so every night. As the town quietens down and the lights all go out for the night, the area is unknowingly stalked by hundreds of crawling eyes, all marked 4, They originate from the Biwa demon of the Infinity Castle, now possessing widespread locks of hair that cover the wall she sits before. With the strums of her Biwa, the demon uses her numerous eyes to track Muichiro as he is running into the night. Muichiro runs up a flight of stairs that leads to a shrine where Sanemi and Obanai are sparring, as Sanemi uses wind-breathing, fourth form. Rising Dust Storm to defend himself, Obanai responds with serpent-breathing, fifth form, slithering serpent, allowing him to intercept the attack and fend him off, causing both Hashira to surmise that they seem to be evenly matched. Muichiro then asks that he be allowed to join them. Sanemi, noticing he has been coming to the courtyard every night, asks about how his training has been. Muichiro responds that while training is enough for the other court members, it is not sufficient for him. Sanemi laughs at his similar experience and remarks that for him and Obanai, true Hashira training is sparring with one another. When Muichiro notes the inequity of them being the only ones to train effectively, Obanai then responds that to honor his decision to come to them, he and Sanemi will engage him together as both Hashira take their stances. Muichiro jokingly remarks about the unfairness of having him face them both, but nonetheless takes his position. With his misbreathing, he rushes past Obanai's attempt to strike, catching the serpent Hashira off guard before he maneuvers around Sanemi to attack him. The Wind Hashira bends back to evade his blade but narrowly misses his own slash at Muichiro, who then swings at him from the side. Sanemi reacts by blocking his blade with his foot, using it to launch himself away as Obanai lunges at the missed Hashira, leading to an intense skirmish that envelopes the courtyard with dust clouds and debris. From nearby, Muichiro's crow encourages him to beat the two Hashira, to which Sanemi responds by aiming an attack at her to silence her praises. After the clash, which has left the ground littered with craters, Sanemi reflects on what he believes was a difficult session, adding that had either of them lost focus for a second, they would have gotten injured. Obanai concurs with him, and Sanemi reasons that training the court members in the day and performing combat training at night will be enough to ready them. When Obanai asks Muichiro about how his training went, he replies that Tanjiro had come to his place, surprising both Hashiras, given their dislike of him. Muichiro adds that while he is still healing, he'll be recovered upon reaching Obanai. Hearing this, Obanai remarks about his chance to be thorough in training him, and Sanemi eagerly claims he will prove that while stronger, Tanjiro is still no match for a Hashira. To this, Muichiro bids him good luck and to do his best. During training the next day, Muichiro once again intentionally misses a slash onto a trainee's neck to prove he is dead, before noticing the one behind him has stopped moving and proceeding to strike him down. Looking his already battered trainees, Muichiro reasons that they don't have the tension to fight properly and orders that real swords be used for the next session, further worrying them and Tanjiro. The previous trainee, now wielding one of Muichiro's highly sharpened blades, grows nervous as the Hashira orders him to take a stance. Despite nervously getting into position, he soon breaks down and apologizes to Muichiro, kneeling on the floor. Muichiro approaches him and remarks that choosing to not attack recklessly is progress, but the trainee laments his inability to know how to fight in a real battle. He adds that he knows Muichiro leaves to someplace each night and returns with bruises all over him, surprising him, and he vows that they will work harder. Muichiro addresses the trainees by claiming that while they improve, it does not guarantee victory, and he does not wish to see them killed, but to live long instead. Over the next 3 days, as Tanjiro spars with Muichiro, who is visibly in a better mood when with him, he commends his increased speed and instructs the demon slayer to smoothen his transitions between firm and soft movements of his muscles. Tanjiro performs what he is told as he parries and evades Muichiro's every move, leaving the Hashira thoroughly impressed as he explains his stamina will increase by doing so. Eventually, Tanjiro avoids a direct slash at him and lands a powerful blow onto Muichiro's wooden blade. He remarks that the movements in his legs and hips transition perfectly and happily declares he can move to the next Hashira. Tanjiro is stunned to hear this, having only been with him for 5 days, but Muichiro believes it is because he is doing everything he has asked. As the other trainees asks if they too can move on, having been training for 2 weeks, Muichiro's cheery attitude shifts back to his cold, aloof demeanor as he belittles their lack of improvement, telling them they will train their swings till their practice dummies break. As the trainees lament the stark difference in how they and Tanjiro are treated, Tanjiro has an idea and asks Muichiro if they could have a paper airplane competition. Muichiro is surprised by the sudden request, and as Tanjiro shows his own plane, he mentions hearing that he likes paper planes. Previously, he had asked Kozo about Muichiro's hobbies, to which the swordsmith answers that it is making paper planes, showing the large pile that Hashira had made. Arriving at Mitsuri's mansion, Tanjiro is excitedly welcomed by the loved Hashira. He bows to her in respect and remarks he's glad to see her doing well, and she answers she too is happy to see him. She takes him inside as she explains she will brew him black tea and make him pancakes. adding that he must put butter on them, though the confused Tanjiro only wonders about what butter and pancakes are, barely able to recognize black tea. Seated at a table, Tanjiro is presented with a stack of pancakes covered in butter and topped with a honeycomb. He is surprised to see what pancakes are but does not know how to eat it. Mitsuri slices into the stack and feeds him a piece, causing him to exclaim that the taste is to die for. She concurs with his statement and adds that once he is done, he must don a pink uniform. He obliges and joins a group of other trainees, visible embarrassed by their attire, though Tanjiro is excited to commence. As Mitsuri's Kasuga Crow cranks a gramophone, the Demon Slayers dance to the rhythm of the music while twirling ribbons, following the Hashira's lead. As the trainees struggle to balance themselves, Tanjiro is able to follow Mitsuri in each exercise successfully. Afterwards, she emphasizes that a flexible body is key to having sharper movements. With each trainee in a pair and with their legs pushed against their partners, she commences their stretching regimen. When Tanjiro and a trainee struggle to pull each other to stretch themselves, Mitsuri steps in and asks that he step aside as she demonstrates the proper technique. She sits down, holds onto his hands, and immediately pulls her legs apart, forcing the unfortunate trainee into a painful split. As his screams of pain fill the room, the horrified Tanjiro mutters she is using brute force more than a stretching technique, before Mitsuri then asks that he take his turn. In front of nervous trainees, he anxiously sits in front of her as she prepares to stretch him, yelling out that flexibility training is hellish as he howls in pain at being forced into a split. Afterwards, Tanjiro arrives at the residence of Obanai, who remarks that he had been waiting for him. He attempts to tell Obanai of his excitement to train, but is silenced by a threat on his life. The serpent Hashira informs him about Mitsuri speaking of her experience with training him, adding that she seemingly had fun doing so. Previously, Obanai was presented with a letter from her Kasugai Crow. He reads as Mitsuri tells him she had tea with Tanjiro after training, mentioning that he looks so adorable whenever he eats something she has made, causing the Hashira to seethe with anger. Obanai tells the Demon Slayer he is not soft like the love Hashira, causing Tanjiro to realize that he hates him from the beginning. Opening his doors, he presents the training he has designed for him. Tanjiro is startled to see numerous trainees gagged and tied to posts all throughout the Hashira's training hall. Obanai explains his objective is to swing his sword while dodging the obstacles to refine his swordsmanship, but the Demon Slayer only asks if the room's grounds for execution. When asked if the people tied up had committed any crimes to be punished, Obanai only replies they have committed the crimes of weakness, failing to learn, wasting his time, and annoying him, causing Tanjiro to question how he will go about with his task. Presented with his Bokudo, Tanjiro is given a single demonstration and watches as Obanai expertly slashes between the trainees to strike spring-loaded chimes. He marvels at the speed and accuracy of Obanai's attacks before he is told to take in his turn. As he takes his stance, Tanjiro's mind is immediately filled with the internal thoughts of the tied trainees, all of whom are begging not to be hit. As a result, Tanjiro's swings are sloppy as he hesitates to swing his sword to avoid hitting the trainees. Unimpressed, Obanai scoffs at Tanjiro's attempt at training and challenges him to a sparring match inside the dojo. He obliges, but as he attempts to swing, a trainee silently yells out begging not to be hit, causing him to hesitate and leading Obanai to strike him in the ribs. Tanjiro tries again and runs to the right to lead Obanai, but the Hashira attacks first and strikes him in the chest, deriding him for being too slow. As Obanai orders him to get up and attack again, Tanjiro remarks a most terrifying training ever just started. Though you may only be using a wooden sword, Tanjiro knows it would nonetheless cause injuries accidentally hitting a trainee, and his difficulty is increased by having to navigate his way around the trainees to avoid Obanai, whose sword slashes are able to weave around the obstacles at seemingly impossible angles, akin to a serpent. He questions how the Hashira can attack in such a way whilst they wield the same weapon. Additionally, he continues to hear the inner voices of the trainees as he aims between them, only leading to hesitation that Obanai uses to reprimand him. Afterwards, Tanjiro continues to swing and aim for the chimes as his peers ask why he is persisting on training after sparring with Obanai. When he replies he wishes to make it less troublesome for them, the trainees appreciate his gesture and join him in practice. Later that night, Tanjiro and the trainees look at the onsen they are about to enter, grimacing as they realizing their injuries will sting worse in the hot water. They enter the bath at once and promptly scream in pain. Over the second and third day, Tanjiro's training makes little progress as he continues to be struck during his sparring matches with Obanai, who repeatedly criticizes him for his sluggishness in attacking, only followed later by another painfully hot bath in the onsen. On the fourth day, Tanjiro runs to the right as Obanai mocks him for not making a swing. When he does, it misses and hits a post, nearly injuring a trainee's head doing so. Realizing he must focus on nothing else but facing Obanai, Tanjiro also acknowledges that getting his sword caught on a real obstacle would prove fatal in battle. To isolate all other distractions, he imagines himself and Obanai within a dense forest. As the two commence battle once more, the serpent Hashira quickly goes on the offensive, but Tanjiro is now able to react and block his attacks, successfully evading and maneuvering his way around the imaginary forest. With greater confidence in his skills and awareness, Tanjiro begins to attack his opponent with more accurate swings than ever and defend against his every move, culminating in landing a slash on Obanai's Hori, the sign that he has passed his stage of training. After the spar, Tanjiro bows to the Hashira and thanks him, only to receive a stern warning to avoid interacting with Mitsuri again, causing the demon slayer to lament that he is hated even until the end. On his way to Senemi's dojo, Tanjiro gets lost and must be pointed to in the right direction by his crow. The two are then intensely startled by Zenitsu's sudden appearance, who clutches onto his friend and pleads with him to help him escape. Confused by what he means, Zenitsu explains he cannot stand upright anymore and crawled along the walls to make his escape, claiming it is a matter of life and death. The two were then covered by the shadow of a tall figure and stare in horrified silence as the Wind Hashira himself grabs Zenitsu by the head, demanding he choose between returning to training or being killed by him. Zenitsu grabs onto Tanjiro and pleads for mercy, only to be chopped in the neck and knocked unconscious before Sanemi orders the demon slayer to carry him back. Tanjiro obeys and apologizes to Zenitsu, promising to endure training with him. While en route to the dojo, he tells Sanemi of his excitement to begin training. Sanemi stops to tell the demon slayer not get cocky as he still has not accepted him. Tanjiro cheerfully retorts that he doesn't mind as he doesn't accept him either, recalling when he stabbed Nezuko. Watching as Tanjiro triumphantly walks off, Sanemi wordlessly stares at him before angrily remarking on his nerve to reply back. The Wind Hashira's drills involved multiple trainees sparring against him, a straightforward task that becomes immensely difficult due to Sanemi's brutality and refusal to give any breaks, only allowing trainees to stop when they vomit blood or lose consciousness. Tanjiro remarks that he understands why Zenitsu was so desperate to escape, and that even Obanai gave him more breaks. Additionally, when Zenitsu regained consciousness, he furiously lashed out at him as if he murdered his parents. Sanemi is especially hard on Tanjiro, using any brief lapse in concentration to focus all his attacks towards him and even backfist the demon slayer across the face. The result is Tanjiro's body becoming swollen and covered in bruises. Demoralized by his dismal first day, Tanjiro walks inside the Hashira's house when he hears Genya's voice, calling for his brother's attention. He senses his scent and finds him with Sanemi. Genya pleads with him to listen, but Sanemi dismisses him, claiming he does not have a brother and threatening to kill him if he continues. As Genya absorbs his harsh threat, Tanjiro sadly notes that their confrontation is unlike how he fights with his siblings, remembering when he tickled Shigeru into surrender. Sanemi tells Genya not to act like they are close and belittles him further by noting his lack of skill, remarking that he should quit the Demon Slayer Corps since he cannot call himself a swordsman without using breathing techniques. As he turns away, Genya tries to explain he had always wanted to apologize to him, but Sanemi ignores it as unimportant to him and walks on. Desperate not to lose his chance, Genya confesses that he even ate demons to fight and reach where he is now, causing Sanemi to stop. Taking in what he just said, the Wind Hashira angrily demands he repeat himself, stomping down his foot and frightening Genya and Tanjiro with his rage. He then vanishes as Genya grows confused at his sudden disappearance. Tanjiro bursts forth to reach him as Sanemi viciously attempts to gouge out his eyes. Tanjiro grabs Genya and pushes him away, causing a cut across his face from his fingers as the two punch through the wall. In the yard, Zenitsu and the trainees question how much longer their training will last when he is startled by the loud sound of Tanjiro and Genya landing outside. Believing Sanemi has returned, Zenitsu and the trainees pretend to faint and lie down. He then sees Tanjiro and questions what he is doing breaking his wall. As Tanjiro looks in the house and pleads with Sanemi to stop, Zenitsu grows frightened at a loud and ominous sound filling the air as the enraged Wind Hashira steps out to confront the Demon Slayer. Tanjiro demands to know if Sanemi intended to kill Genya, to which he replies he was not, claiming it would be too simple. Instead, he intends to cripple him beyond his healing, though he would forgive him if he leaves the court at once. Tanjiro refuses to accept his authority and tells Sanemi he has no right to make Genya's decisions by disowning him as his brother only moments prior. He explains that he chose to risk his life battling demons whether he had the talent to do so or not, and promises not to let even him get in his way. Without Genya, they wouldn't have defeated an upper rank without him, and he will not let the Hashira harm him. Hearing this, Sanemi instead decides he will cripple the Demon Slayer first before taking a fighting stance. With tremendous speed, he lunges forth and punches Tanjiro in the chest, lifting him up and shocking Genya and Zenitsu. To his surprise, he finds the Demon Slayer has stopped his fist from actually hitting him before he kicks him in the head into letting go. The trainees are stunned to see that Hashira has been dealt a blow. Tanjiro orders Zenitsu to force Genya away from the scene, though unintentionally annoys him with attempt at a signal. Genya then warns him as Sanemi attempts to kick him in the head. He narrowly misses, but his foot cuts across Tanjiro's ear. Sanemi claims that Tanjiro's actions must be part of his death wish and he would be happy to kill him. As Genya attempts to dissuade his brother from further violence, Zenitsu pulls him away from the scene to his chagrin. He remarks that it is best to separate two arguing individuals as they flee before claiming he pities him for having a total lunatic as an elder brother, though Genya does not take kindly to the insult and punches Zenitsu in the face. Despite the trainees attempting to restrain Sanemi from hurting Tanjiro further, their brawl lasts until sundown. Afterwards, Tanjiro was reprimanded by the courts for his actions, and as such, his training with Sanemi was suspended and he was barred from approaching him, though Tanjiro is more dismayed by his failure to reconcile the Shinazugawa siblings. The next day, while walking with Zenitsu in the middle of a mountain forest, Tanjiro remarks he did not intend to have training with Sanemi suspended and believes his training is not bearing fruit. Zenitsu denies this as he witnessed him able to take on Sanemi, before angrily ranting about the mountainous location of the stone Hashira's house. He then hears something in the distance and leads Tanjiro to a waterfall in a clearing. There they see trainees including Inosuke, chanting the Nembutsu as they attempt to keep standing beneath the pressing torrent. The two are shocked by the scene when they hear a voice behind them, who tells them that extinguishing the heart and mind can make even fires cool. Tanjiro and Zenitsu are dumbfounded to see the stone Hashira, Gyomei Himjima, bearing heavy logs and rocks while atop fiery ground, welcoming them to his training grounds. Upon arriving at the training grounds, Zenitsu and Tanjiro listen to Gyomei as he emphasizes the importance of their body's core, specifically their lower body, and he explains that by stabilizing themselves with a firm foundation, the accuracy of their attacks and their defense will increase. Training begins by immersing themselves beneath the waterfall, watching as two trainees struggle to stay upright. Afterwards, they must lift a set of 3 large logs tied together, and to complete training, they must push a boulder for 1 cho. Gyomei believes that his stage is simple, only consisting of 3 tasks. Additionally, he has decided not to include setting fire beneath them, deeming it too dangerous. Tanjiro interrupts Gyomei to inform him that Zenitsu had fainted, to which he is instructed to throw him in the river. Upon being placed in the water, Zenitsu abruptly awakens from the cold, attempting to reach dry land as he bemoans having to be in a river during winter. As Tanjiro calls to him, he yells out that his internal organs are in agony, as if they are crying out in fear of death. Even when he is out of the river, Zenitsu continues to shiver uncontrollably and believes he will freeze to death. He then senses something behind him and sees Murata, who tells him to cling to the boulders for warmth. Zenitsu instantly lunges to one nearby and is welcomed by its heat, tearing up as he remarks that he had never imagined boulders could be so warm and claiming it feels like being in his mother's arms, causing him to call for her. Simultaneously, Tanjiro struggles to reach the waterfall to begin training. He notices Inosuke beneath the waterfall with a trainee continuing to chant "coming through" as he endures the frigid torrent. The trainee soon abandons his attempt and walks out of the falls, causing Tanjiro to commend the lone Inosuke for giving his all and believing he should to. Soon, he notices Inosuke is not speaking, realizing something is wrong as he pulls him onto dry land to take his mask off and perform CPR. When Inosuke wakes up, wondering if he had called his name, Tanjiro cries in relief. As he makes his first attempt, he strains to keep his body steady as the cold water and pressing torrent bears down on him. Nearby, Murata instructs Tanjiro to chant the Nenbutsu, both for concentration and to signal he is conscious, before chanting the Nyan for the focus. Eventually, Tanjiro puts his hands together and begins to chant Nenbutsu as he endures the weight of the water. His efforts soon fizzle out as he reaches his tolerance for the cold. By the boulders, he tells Murata that despite them only standing beneath a waterfall, the task was harsh, and that if he relaxed his body, his neck could have broke from the weight of the water. Murata commends him and Inosuke as it took him the entirety of his first day to even get used to the water. Now able to stand beneath for 2 hours, he can move to log training. Tanjiro, with teeth chattering, gives his encouragement, though Murata mentions he had been training for 10 days. During the break, Tanjiro grills fish for the trainees. Inosuke gobbles his food as he remarks of his amazement of the old guy with the rattling beads. As Tanjiro chides him for the nickname he has given Gyomei, Inosuke adds that he felt chills meeting him for the first time. To Tanjiro's and the trainee's surprise, they notices he is eating the bones of his fish as well, to which he claims tastes good as he takes his 10th fish. Inosuke believes without any doubt that Gyomei is the strongest in the Demon Slayer Corps, and Tanjiro adds that his scent is different to the other Hashira as well. When he wonders if he has already gained his mark, Inosuke remarks he would not be surprised if he has, remembering when Gyomei pounded him into the ground. The other trainees mutter that they cannot keep up with the conversation of those who ranked up quickly, claiming they are on a different level. Additionally, they are pleased by Tanjiro's cooking. Zenitsu angrily chimes in that Gyomei cannot possibly move a boulder one cho, and that he simply enjoys tormenting them. When Tanjiro mentions hearing the stone Hashira could move bigger boulders, Zenitsu mocks him for believing everything he hears. To this, Tanjiro notes that given his hearing, he can tell if he is lying, just as Gyomei himself appears behind the group, pushing an immense boulder while chanting the Nanfo. Zenitsu and the trainees stare in silence at the Hashira's strength. When Tanjiro asks if he could be like Gyomei, Zenitsu repeatedly punches him for his optimism amidst the hellish training, claiming that there is a gap between giants and little people. Inosuke adds to his anger by putting on his mask and confidently claiming he will lift the logs and push the boulder. During waterfall training later in the day, Tanjiro and Zenitsu work hard chanting the Nenbutsu and Nyanfo while maintaining their pose, though Zenitsu soon loses his stance and is pulled downstream, needing to be rescued by Tanjiro. After the completion of the first task is signaled by his Kasubat crow, Tanjiro moves onto the logs. Despite the struggle to lift them over him, he is able to successfully press the set above his head, leaving him with moving the boulder. Amidst the nearby town, the Biwa demon's detached eyes continue to stalk the townsfolk into the night until she spots a demon slayer. She informs Muzan about locating 60% of the demon slayers, but she is yet to locate Nezuko. Muzan addresses the demon by her name, Nakim, and remarks of his delight to see her grow beyond what he had imagined. Nakim expresses gratitude at his words before he motions her into looking into a new location. With her Biwa, Nakim accesses the view from the detached eye in the area as she follows two more demon slayers. As she does, Muzan believes it is only a matter of time until he has Nezuko and Kagaya. In Tanjiro's first attempt at pushing the boulder, despite using all his might, it does not move and his efforts only result in his sandal breaking. While walking back to have it fixed, he comes across several trainees preparing to leave. They inform him their early departure is because they cannot keep up with training, leaving Tanjiro dismayed. They themselves feel guilty for bailing on training, but to make up for it, they will delegate it to a support role for the stronger fighters like him. The three tell Tanjiro they are counting on his efforts, and the Demon Slayer bows in acknowledgement, remarking that he is counting on them as well. Confused by his statement, they hear as Tanjiro explains if they can support the strong fighters, they can fight the demons without distractions, and with everyone's effort, they can sever the head of Muzan. This encourages them, and they depart proudly, telling Tanjiro to leave the supporting roles to them. After fixing his sandal, Tanjiro takes another futile attempt at pushing the boulder. During another break, trainees are impressed by Tanjiro's skill at making onigiri. Additionally, with the greater effort they have exerted in training, he has included extra salt. He proudly presents the onigiris to his peers, and they delight in his cooking. While eating, Murata states his realization to why the current Hashira do not have many tsubukos. The trainees all agree it is either because training is too harsh, and everyone is frightened, or in Zenitsu's case, they grow dejected at the gap between them and the Hashira. While they marvel at the Hashira's strength, they also commend Tanjiro for his cooking skills. He claims it is because he is the son of a charcoal burner and knows that cooking is about the right heat. As an extra treat, he cooks miso-flavored onigiri for the trainees, causing them all to recall memories of their own mother's cooking and happiness. Tanjiro himself smiles at seeing their joy, reminded of times he had cooked for his family. Now on his 6th day of training, Tanjiro once again exhausts himself without nudging the boulder. Knowing the demons and activity will not last, he struggles to understand what he is not doing, wondering if he is lacking the muscular strength or he does not know another breathing technique. Adding to his troubles, all his training has not amounted to his mark being maintained. Genya suddenly appears and asks if his mark is darker. Tanjiro is shocked to see him as he could not contact him following his earlier scuffle with Sanemi. Genya states he was confined on house arrest as a result, and that Gyomei scolded him as well. Even when he was barred from seeing Sanemi, he ignored it, and the situation ended with Tanjiro being involved. He apologizes for the incident and thanks Tanjiro for defending him, but he does not mind. Referring to his mark, Genya tells him it has indeed gotten darker, which Tanjiro was unaware of since the trainees are always seeing him, and he is delighted to know his training is paying off. Seeing he is training with the boulder, Genya mentions he is at the same stage as well, and Tanjiro is surprised to learn he was able to move it. He asks if he is using repetitive action, but Tanjiro's confused expression demonstrates he does not, which Genya blames on Gyomei's poor teaching. Genya reveals he had learned the technique through watching Gyomei and explains that repetitive action involves heightening concentration with a predetermined action. In his case, he recites the Nenbutsu. Tanjiro realizes Gyomei does the same, and Genya jokingly mimics his habit of saying Namu Namu, unaware that Gyomei is watching in the distance. As Genya departs after giving his advice, Tanjiro tells him he will attempt to use repetitive action. Genya tells him not to push himself too much, though he mutters under his breath that Tanjiro is not one to listen. Placing his hands on the boulder and taking his stance, Tanjiro takes several deep breaths as he remembers Genya's statement. Repetitive action will allow him to open all 5 of his senses, and even though Genya is unable to use a breathing technique, Gyomei assured him of being able to move the boulder, though he is far from completing the task. As he begins to push on the boulder, Tanjiro recalls that Gyomei and Genya harken back to memories of pain and anger, thereby increasing their heart rate and body temperature. This time, the boulder is able to nudge slightly, though Tanjiro remains unable to push it before he is interrupted by his peers asking him to make dinner. That evening, Genya joins the trainees and helps Tanjiro with cooking dinner. While preparing vegetables, he asks about his attempt at repetitive action. Tanjiro claims it feels different to total concentration, which Genya reasons is due to the technique stirring his emotions. He wonders if his mark only appears when he is in a similar state, though Tanjiro disagrees given that both he and Gyomei have not manifested theirs. They are stumped at what he could be missing to use it until Genya asks Tanjiro about when he feels his emotions most strongly. This causes him to pause for a moment, and Genya apologizes, believing he had upset him, though Tanjiro is not offended. Genya nonetheless reassures him of being able to use repetitive action. In the early morning hours the next day, Tanjiro makes his latest attempt at using repetitive action. He first thinks about the faces of his loved ones, his family, before he then recalls Kyojiro's words to encourage him, "Set your heart ablaze." Inner fire suddenly awakens inside him and his mark manifests. He pushes hard against the boulder, and his increased strength causes it to inch forward, marking the first time he has used the technique successfully. However, he quickly grows tired and loses concentration, causing his mark to disappear as a result. Inosuke and Zenitsu soon appear. Zenitsu remarks that he will not last the day, starting his training early, and Inosuke claims he will not lose to him. Tanjiro takes a deep breath and begins to push again, only this time the boulder does not move. Despite this, he does not give up and realizes he was in fact able to exert his full strength with repetitive action. As he pushes once more, continually recalling his memories to concentrate and exerting himself to give all of his strength, Tanjiro is able to sustain the mark and begins to push the boulder forward, shocking his friends. Zenitsu yells out in amazement at his accomplishment as Inosuke curses him for pushing it before he could. With the mark strengthening him, Tanjiro continues to push the boulder without slowing down. Elsewhere in the Infinity Castle, Muzan ponders on what Kagaya's plan may entail, as well as what the current corps leader's appearance now looks like. Zenitsu's Kasugai crow, a sparrow named Chuntaro, flies through a dimly lit forest while carrying a piece of rolled-up paper with his legs. Meanwhile, Tanjiro finally manages to push a boulder, much to the astonishment of Zenitsu and Inosuke. After briefly pausing, Tanjiro becomes more motivated to push with all his might. Inspired by this sight, Inosuke manically chants Tempura, before he successfully attempts to push his boulder. This leaves Zenitsu hiding behind a tree, who inwardly cries about being the straggler. However, the chirps of Chuntaro grab his attention, and he notices the bird by his feet. He at first dismisses the sparrow and complains that he can't leave until he pushes his boulder, causing Chuntaro to harshly peck his foot. Although at first angered, he notices the paper Chuntaro brought and recognizes it as a letter for him. Shortly afterwards, Tanjiro successfully pushes the boulder one cho. However, the endeavor left him exhausted, and as he is hyperventilating, he realizes that he's completely dehydrated. Fearing that he'll die, he weakly calls out for Zenitsu, Inosuke, or Murata to help as he hallucinates and sees them until Gyomei pours water onto Tanjiro's mouth and desperately prays for his well-being as he responds to Gyomei's surprise. He then announces that his boulder training drill is completed, along with complimenting his efforts in the events that happened at the Swordsmith village in addition, revealing that he acknowledges him for his hard decision to put the villagers' lives before his sister and claims he should be proud. Tanjiro argues Nezuko had been the one to make the decision, believing he doesn't deserve any praise but shows his gratefulness towards being rehydrated with water, to which Gyomei replies saying to continue to grow stronger no matter what anyone else says. As soon as Tanjiro questions his choice to acknowledge him, Gyomei mentions his past as a teacher taking care of orphans in a temple before he joined the Demon Slayer Corps, comparing his time that which he shared with the orphans as if similar to that of a happy family life despite not being related by blood, in which Gyomei reminisced moments of the orphans getting along well together as a supportive group. Gyomei also explained how he would prefer to live the same life forever, until he reveals that one of the children was a traitor, breaking curfew when traveling outside after nightfall as he encounters a demon result of the orphan's ignorance. In order to save himself, the traitor orphan would stretch his selfishness far enough as to offer all other orphans sleeping in the temple as sacrifices to the demon in exchange to flee and escape for his own life. At night, the orphan quietly extinguished the wisteria incense surrounding the temple before the demon came and immediately slaughtered 4 of the 8 children before Gyomei had woken up to realize his responsibility to defend the remaining children, but noticing 3 orphans running at the demon and were killed, leaving Seo as the only orphan listening to his instructions. Gyomei feels enraged at his failure to protect the children he cared about and repeatedly punches the demon until daybreak came. The next day, the villagers came to speak to Seo, who struggled to describe the incident to them when she said that the man was a monster who killed all the children, and since the demon's corpse had disintegrated in the sun, everyone assumed she had been speaking of Gyomei and he was imprisoned. Gyomei cries with emotions of heartbreak in his stay of imprisonment, wishing Seo to at least be thankful and grateful for his actions of fighting and protecting her out of his own care and affection he had for her, understanding she would have been thoroughly confused. Gyomei mentions that he would have been sentenced to execution if it weren't for Kagaya's kind actions of intervening. He tells Tanjiro that he found other people and Hashira hard to trust when he joined the Demon Slayer Corps, also revealing that he didn't trust Tanjiro either until he showed his true potential, as he promises to help Tanjiro in the foreseeable future, to which Tanjiro also promises to continue his efforts to try his best after Gyomei pats him and announces that he has completed his training. Tanjiro, Imasuke, and Genya eat miso soup together as Genya mentions Gyomei wouldn't let him be a Subuko due to lack of talent, but allowed him to become his apprentice after learning that he ate demons, along with recalling how he introduced Genya to Shinobu when she checked his physical condition and including how she lectured him upon every visit. Suddenly, Inosuke tries to steal Zenitsu's fish before Tanjiro exclaims, informing him to wait for Zenitsu to return from training to eat his fish. Tanjiro then reveals that he will soon depart to Giyu's mansion, asking if Genya would come along, to which he apprises that he can't by stating his requirement to finish Gyomei's training first. Furthermore, Inosuke laughs and insults him upon hearing he can't use breathing styles, resulting in both throwing consecutive punches to each other as Tanjiro intervenes. Zenitsu's determination persists when Tanjiro heads outside and finds him still attempting to push his own boulder, worriedly mentioning his silence in past few days, and asks if he would soon eat, in which responding with a reminder for Tanjiro to do his best and sees his training task as a responsibility, learning himself that his strength training is something he must prioritize his full attention on in order to do what he must do and focus on this alone with independence to maintain his enhanced strength. As Tanjiro departs to Giyu's training, he assumes how Nezuko must feel lonely without being in the care of Tanjiro, with a concern that she may be weeping with tears, hoping that she is safe in the care of Sakanjiro Kodaki. Walking up the flight of stairs to Giyu's abode, Sanemi and Giyu can be seen repetitively sparring in an open space where they continuously use their perspective breathing techniques, with Sanemi using Wind Breathing first form, Dust Whirlwind Cutter in fifth form, Cold Mountain Wind, and Giyu using Water Breathing fourth form, Striking Tide in seventh form, Drop Ripple Thrust, as Tanjiro stares on at their immense strength and haste with awe as he quickly rushes in to intervene after the clash to stop Sanemi from attempting to fight Giyu bare-handed. Sanemi angrily interrupts, mentioning the factor of Tanjiro originally being forbidden to interact with him, and his anger heightens due to hearing the mention of his like for red bean mochi, as Tanjiro assumes this to be a potential cause of their battle. Giyu then asks Sanemi if he likes that food, as Tanjiro brags about its taste, causing Sanemi to punch Tanjiro upward, knocking him unconscious for a short period of time before leaving with a hostile demeanor. When Tanjiro awakens, Giyu explains that the fight was intentional and part of the Hashira training, explaining how Hashira battle with each other to test their strength, in which he apologizes for interrupting the spar after learning this. Giyu also claims that through Sanemi's anger, he had figured out what his favorite food really was and came up with the idea to give him some red bean mochi to apologize. Sanemi walks down a flight of stairs in the evening, aggravated by Tanjiro and Giyu's behavior presented towards him. Sanemi also mentions how Obanai and Muichiro are out on training at nightfall, determined to join them again and defeat them in a spar, before his thought was immediately interrupted by recalling what Tanjiro asked, envying him for being so carefree and blaming him for being the reason of his depart. He unexpectedly stops within his tracks and snatches something off of the stair in anger, questioning what it could possibly be, until the object is recognized to be one of McKim's familiar eyeballs crushed by Sanemi's hand, causing the eyeball to disintegrate, and he assumes an active demon infiltration is ongoing within the corpse. Meanwhile, At the Ubuyashiki mansion, a main comforts Kagaya as he lays with his further worsened state, but immediately recognizes an unfamiliar presence as Kagaya also senses the entrance gates opening for an infiltrator slowly approaching far away in the direction whilst remaining in his deteriorated condition. Kagaya glares over to the open doors at the direction of someone drawing near despite having bandages over his eyes and decayed skin, hearing a mysterious figure's footsteps proceeding to heavily grow closer. The clear aura begins to disperse from the ominous shadow as he stops in his tracks at the back entrance of the estate, revealing the familiar visitor confronting him to be Muzan, standing before Kagaya after he welcomes him to his abode. Muzan then remarks Kagaya's current appearance looking unsightly and hideous. There, Muzan has finally reached his destination where he was headed to, the home of the head of demon slayers. Without further ado, Muzan goes inside Master Kagaya's home. As soon as Muzan steps in, Kagaya senses who came to him even though he is blinded. His entire family and the team of demon slayers have been looking for Kagaya since ages. Then Kagaya asks his wife Amain about how Muzan looks. She describes Muzan as he looks like a human whose age is in his early 20s. But his eyes are pink and his pupils are like a cat's pupils. Then Kagaya turns his face to Muzan and says that he knew he would come because he knows that he's very mad at Ubuyashiki's family. So yes, he knew that Muzan would personally come to kill him. Finally, Muzan speaks up and he says that Kagaya is absolutely right since the Ubuyashiki family has been a big hurdle in what he does. But still Muzan mocks Kagaya that he is already on his deathbed. So basically, it makes Muzan sort of content that Kagaya is almost dying. Kagaya gets up and says that Muzan is right because Kagaya's doctor told him that he's going to die in 2 to 4 days, but even after 6 months, he is miserably alive. That is because the anger he holds for Muzan won't let him die. Muzan replies that all his dreams are going down the drain because now he is about to kill Kagaya. After that, Kagaya reveals that Muzan and him are from the same bloodline. Since Muzan was born centuries ago, he probably does not know about that. But Muzan asks Kagaya why he is telling him about this stuff, to which Kagaya tells him that the Ubuyashiki family got cursed after birthing Muzan. Actually, the Ubuyashiki family always had kids who would be very weak and would die eventually. The family tree was dying and then there came a priest who told them that the kid they have birthed is actually a demon and they have to kill the demon to save the bloodline. Other than that, the Ubuyashiki family had to marry their people to someone who is a priest's offspring. Amain is also the daughter of a priest. Because of mixing the bloodline, the people have started to live at least by the age of 30. Hearing that out, Muzan says that he's being stupid and Muzan being a demon has no link with Kagaya dying or his curse which causes illnesses. Further, he says that he has killed a lot of people during his lifetime and to this day, God has not punished him even once. Not just that, Muzan says that he has never witnessed any sort of God ever in his lifetime. Then, Kagaya says that everyone thinks differently, and then asks Muzan about what his dream is. He must have an aim in his life. That puts Muzan into thinking about what he is feeling like, and he feels a weird feeling. He thinks that the demon slaying course leader is literally in front of him, yet he does not feel any hatred towards him. Muzan turns to see Kagaya's daughters, who are playing with a ball. They probably can't see him standing there, and Muzan feels a weird sort of feeling, something that he has not felt before. Not just that, he feels like a warmth of home, and he knows that the entire mansion just has 4 people right now, Kagaya, his wife, and his daughters. Getting no answer from Muzan, Kagaya finally speaks up and says that he knows what he dreams about. That being, Muzan wants to live forever. Muzan looks back at Kagaya and says that he is right about it. As soon as he gets Nezuko, he will complete his dream. To which Kagaya says that he won't be able to see his dream come true. Muzan steps up near Kagaya, and Kagaya says further that his aim is weird because nothing in this world is immortal. Except human emotions, they always stay back here. Of course, Muzan finds this statement sort of really silly. Further, Kagaya says that Demon Slayer Court is still working to this day because they all stand firm on emotions against a demon who has taken the lives of so many innocent people. He says to Muzan that Muzan has kept his feet on the tail of the tiger, which has awakened all the anger in the tiger being members of Demon Slayer Corps. Kagaya continues to say that all these tigers have eyes on him, and even if Muzan kills Kagaya right here, it won't make much of a difference. But if Muzan gets killed right here, all the demons along with him will have to die. Hearing all that out is making Muzan really angry. Further, Kagaya says that all the demon slayers love Kagaya very much and his death will result in them being more motivated to reach their goal. Being tired of all that speech, Muzan asks Kagaya if he's done with speaking so he can now kill him. Kagaya says thanks to him for letting him speak. On the other hand, the crows announced an emergency everywhere that there is an attack on Ubuyashiki residents. Hearing that, everyone is scared and runs to the residence with tears in their eyes as fast as they can because they can't see their master getting killed. Meanwhile, back at the residency, Muzan is about to attack Kagaya and kill him. But suddenly, the entire residence explodes immensely. A blast no one has ever seen that completely destroyed the entire mansion. The Hashiras are looking at the explosion that took place. The explosion was so intense that even Muzan got burned up in the explosion. But Muzan saves himself and thinks that what could it be that Kagaya killed himself and his entire family in the blast. Muzan really thought Kagaya would never do something like that with such a smile on his face. He did know that there must be some sort of trap, but he did not realize that the trap could be that big. Other than that, there were a bunch of spikes in the entire explosion, so Muzan could be slowed down with his healing process. Muzan knows that Kagaya must have thought about something too, and that is when he senses that Hashiras are coming towards him with a lot of speed. He thinks about how sharp Kagaya is and if his wife and kids knew about his plan to blow up the entire residence. But he puts all his thoughts aside and focuses on regenerating his body. Suddenly, he sees a bunch of blood seeds which blow up into spikes, which hold Muzan super tightly and get trapped. He tries freeing himself, but he begins to absorb the spikes. Just when Muzan was doing that, Tamayo shows up and stabs Muzan with her hand, and he wonders where she came from. She tells him that these blood seeds are of the human who Muzan turned into a demon, and Tamayo herself had hidden herself from Yoshiro's talisman. But Muzan keeps wondering why she is here, and he begins to absorb her hand as well. Then Tamayo tells him that she had a pill in her hand, which makes demons turn back into humans. But Muzan says that there is no such pill that exists, to which Tamayo says she just made this pill with the help of someone. Muzan holds her head tightly and says to her that she has no right to hate Muzan because she herself killed her own husband and kids and devoured them. All he did was turn her into a demon. Tamayo begins to cry and says that she never wanted to be a demon, it was just her illness she was trying to run away from so that she could see her kids growing up. But as soon as she became a demon, Tamayo killed her family. Then Muzan says to her that she has killed a lot more people than her own family, and she used to love to eat them. With tears in her eyes, Tamayo says that she has made a lot of mistakes, and as a punishment, she will also die with him here. After that, Tamayo screams to Gyomei that it is his turn to attack Muzan with all his strength. Gyomei is here too, who was also hidden there by Yoshiro's talisman. He picks up his chained weapon and attacks Muzan's head. Here comes a flashback. When Gyomei was 18, he met Master Kagaya, who was just 14 at the time. Kagaya was the first to tell Gyomei that he is innocent and he is not a killer. That made Gyomei emotional, and he falls down to his knees and begins to cry like a baby in front of Kagaya. When Gyomei met Kagaya for the last time, when Kagaya was almost on his death with his face wrapped, Kagaya predicted that Muzan will be showing up soon enough and wants Gyomei to kill Muzan by hitting his head and bringing it to pieces. It is then revealed that the Ubayashiki family had a great instinct, and they could predict what was about to happen in the near future, and that what has been protecting them from some major stuff too. Then he told Gyomei he used Kagaya as a sacrifice for the plan, and he knew Gyomei would listen to him no matter what. With tears in his eyes flowing down his cheeks, Gyomei agrees to it because Kagaya knew that Gyomei would never say no because he was the oldest Hashira that Kagaya had. The flashback ends, and as expected, even if hitting Muzan's head does not kill him, Kagaya had previously told Gyomei that only sunlight will be able to kill Muzan, so somehow he has to hold Muzan in a battle till the sun rises. But Muzan's regeneration power is very fast, and Gyomei promises himself that he will do anything to keep him here no matter what because he promised that to his dying master, who sacrificed himself for a better plan. That is when Muzan uses his blood demon art to attack Gyomei to kill him as he was being a total pain in the arse, but he saves himself from the attack by using his stone-breathing third form and breaks Muzan's attack as if it was nothing for him to dodge. That is when the rest of the Hashiras reach too, screaming at Muzan that what he did to their master Kagaya. Muzan is now completely surrounded by all the Hashiras, and Gyomei screams and tells everyone that Muzan can't die easily because he tried it and he regenerated his head. Everyone is shocked as they hear that, and they all assemble to use their breathing attack all together. Strangely, Muzan passes a creepy smile, and before all the Hashiras could reach him, he traps all the demon slayers in an infinity castle with him. Some of them are scared and some of them are calm, while some of them are furious seeing where they got trapped by Muzan. With rage on his face, Muzan says that this is hell and he has brought everyone with him to hell. But Tanjiro says angrily that the only one going to hell will be him and no one else. That's where this video ends. You have to click on the right to see its next part. And to see best anime recap on my channel, you have to click on the left. If you liked the video, like it and subscribe to see more contents of this.